Hello everyone, my name is Scott from SNS Games, and I'd like to introduce you to a brand new tutorial series here with Unity. I know there's a lot of tutorials out there for Unity 3D. I just wanted to put out my own tutorial series. We're going to be going over mostly just basics in the first several episodes, maybe get into a little more intermediate stuff, and then later on in the future we'll get into a little more advanced stuff. I also wanted to try and be a little more interactive with you guys than I've seen a lot of other YouTube tutorial people be. I'll take your requests, and if you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them in a timely fashion. But yeah, let's jump right into Unity. You'll see that I've started a new Unity project. The only thing in here is my main camera. We're going to go ahead and reset that main camera's position to 0, 0, 0, 0, and we'll bring it up just a little bit. Second thing we want to do is we just want to get a something for the player to walk around on, like a ground. So we'll just create a plane, reset its position to 0, 0, 0, move it over a little bit. If we want to, we can scale this out a little bit, just make it a little bigger. Second thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a directional light. That way we can actually see what's going on in our scene. So we're just going to put a directional light on there. A lot of people like to put one directional light. I like to put two directional lights. The first one I'll set to be a light blue color, and we'll lower its intensity to about 0.25. And we'll go ahead and duplicate that, and we'll make the second light a slight yellowish color, and we'll set its intensity to 2.5. Now I'm going to go ahead and just import a character controller here, one of the ones that come default in your Unity installation. Just click on None here. I want let's just grab the first person controller and the scripts that go along with it. We're not really going to be doing any third person stuff here in this tutorial, at least. So we'll let that compile. Okay. So what we'll do is you go to Standard Assets, Character Controllers. You'll find this First Person Controller prefab here. You're just going to drag and drop it into the scene. And you can go ahead and reset its position. Go ahead and bring it up a little bit so it's not in the ground. You'll notice that this First Person Controller, you'll see these green lines. This is its character controller. It's basically a collider, and it lets the Unity know that it can collide with something. You'll also notice that this plane has a mesh collider. So when the player collides with the ground, he won't be able to go through it. That's basically what a collider is. So we'll go ahead and we'll just set him as close to the ground as possible without going through it. You can tell when he's cut off. You want him just slightly above the collider so that he doesn't go through it. Alright, we'll go ahead and we'll test that out, see how that's working. You'll notice when you move your mouse that he will look around, and if you walk around, push forward, he'll move forward, push back, he'll move back, push side to side, he'll move side to side. So that's working just like the way we want it. Now you'll notice in my console I have a warning here. Well, it's not really a warning, but it says there are 2 audio listeners in the scene. Please ensure that there's actually 1 audio listener in the scene. That's because we have a main camera already, and the first person controller prefab comes with a main camera. So we're just going to go ahead and delete the one that did not come with the prefab. There you go. Now let's go over this first person controller a little bit. We could program our own, but I just want to get you to see the basics of Unity before we get into a lot of, like scripting, especially character controllers, things like that. Because if you don't know anything about Unity, you don't know anything about C#, then we get into trying to program a character controller. And I mean, there's several ways we can do it. We can either add a rigid body to it, and we can control it that way by adding force, or we can just use the character controller to transform its vector 3. And if you don't know anything about Unity or C#, then we start talking about vector 3s and rigid bodies, and you might get a little confused or lost. So for now, we're going to go over the prefabbed default Unity first version controller and explain, try to figure out what some of this stuff means. And then at a later date, we'll probably program a smoother first-person controller. Basically, this is the first-person controller's transform, or we can call it its position in world space, where it's at on the x-axis, where it's at on the z-axis, where it's at on the y-axis. So we can go ahead and put it back on the floor. We have its rotation and its scale, its size in world space. This character controller is on here. It's basically controls the character because the FPS input controller script, if we look up here, it'll say well, one of these. Yeah, the character motor requires that the first person controller have a character controller. So this is the radius and the height of the character controller. Like I said, it's kind of its collider. So if you wanted to, you could change the radius, and that right there shows that nothing can collide with the player in this area, which means nothing would even be able to get close to the character in this particular situation. So we're going to go ahead and reset that. Down here we have the character motor. This is basically what does all the movements, all the jumping, everything for the character. Set its maximum forward speed. Well, we can set that to 8, or let's go ahead and set that to 5. Max sideways speed. Well, you can move sideways faster than you can move forward. So we're going to set that to 4. Max backwards, we'll set that to 3. Max ground acceleration is how fast he picks up speed on his way to his maximum speed. So 20s, I guess that's pretty good for now. We'll just leave it alone. Maximum air acceleration is how fast he begins to fall after he's reached the apex of his jump. Gravity is how much force is pulling him back towards the floor. 20's okay, unless your jump height isn't that high. I like to usually go with 15. Just out of personal preference. Everybody, you might fiddle around with it for your own individual project. And the maximum fall speed. Using this maximum fall speed here, at some point you can use it to determine how fast your character's falling at what point when he hits a collider. He can do damage, take fall damage, kill him, whatever. Jumping here, you can enable or disable jumping. Your base height is how far he jumps. The extra height is how much further he goes after he's reached the apex of his base height. I'm not really sure what the perp amount is. I always leave it at 0. Moving platforms, that's a physics-based. For moving platforms, like in a platform game, you might say you have a platform that's moving back and forth, and that just makes sure that he knows how to handle moving platforms when he comes upon them. Sliding is we can't really. Let me pull this main camera back a little bit. That way we can just see something. if you'll watch that when he moves, when he stops moving, he continues in his little direction just a little bit. That's what the sliding is for. We'll go ahead and reset this position. Okay, reset there. And of course there's an audio listener on the camera, and it lets you put sounds into the game. You can have there's a way to have multiple audio listeners situated throughout your game. One audio listener on your player, and then another, say, over here somewhere. So the audio listener on your player can hear its footsteps, and then as you get closer and closer to the audio listener that's over here, you might start to hear a waterfall or something like that. So yeah, that's the basics of importing a first-person controller into Unity. In the next part, we'll go over maybe doing a dialogue system, or getting, doing something that's just simple that we can get into a little bit of programming and coding. If you're interested in following and for more tutorials on Unity 3D, don't forget to like and subscribe.